which I know is one of the most important projects the DG is working on. And then finally, we're going to look at some case studies actually out of the UAE, where we can see monitoring and evaluation as constructive, really intended to help the schools improve. See, there's already a question. Oh, no, it's not actually a question. Okay. Right, so let's jump in then. We have our objectives. So I'll give you a moment to read through those. And I'll ask you to set an objective for yourself. What is it that you want to get out of this workshop? What would be beneficial to you? If there's one thing based on these objectives that you could take away, what would it be? And in case anyone's just connected through audio without the screen, I'll share the objectives. So objective 1 is to understand the interdependency of monitoring and evaluation, self-evaluation, and school improvement planning. The second objective is to provide appropriate and actionable monitoring and evaluation feedback based on a range of scenarios. And I think the point about appropriate feedback for a range of scenarios is really key. Actually uniquely in the context of Lagos with the diversity of private schools that you have. And it's very similar to the UAE context in that sense, as we also have around 90% private schools here too. So I'm going to ask you in the chat, right, just a simple, actually, let me jump out of this. I'm going to number the questions. Let me just pull this back up because it'll be easier for us to do this if the questions are numbered. We're not doing it as a poll. Reshare. Oops, where'd it go? There it is. Okay, so really simply, this is what we're going to do here. I would like you to, in the chat, write your responses. So 1 and 2 are simply yes or no questions, right? 1 is, can schools and the OEQA really be partners in monitoring and evaluation? So you would write 1, and then a yes or a no or a Y or an N. 2, is there a difference between monitoring and evaluation? Again, you'll write a Y or an N, a yes or a no. And then I want you to think about your own experience, whether you're coming from a school or coming from the OEQA. What do you see as currently missing from monitoring and evaluation? What do you wish it would do that it's not doing right now? So I'll just give you an example. So for me, let's say, can the schools in the OEQA be partners in monitoring and evaluation? Yes, I think so. 2, is there a difference between monitoring and evaluation? Personally, I think so. There are no right or wrong answers to this. And then 3, what is missing from monitoring and evaluation? I would say communication systems for constructive feedback. So I'm popping that into the chat. So I'd like all of you to do the same. I'm going to stop talking for a minute and give you a chance to respond just as I did in the chat. If you don't have an answer for 3, that's okay. You can just do 1 and 2. But I'd like answers for 3. Hey, good morning, Mr. Kahinde, but I don't want anyone introducing themselves anymore. Now you need to put answers into the chat. Thank you, OEQA team.
Okay, so we expect to see participation now in the chat box. Please let us know what you think. 1, 2, 3. Is it yes or no? There are no right or wrong answers, please.
I love the response we got from, now I'm afraid I'm gonna not do well with the name, but let me see here. Hold on, I just lost the response. my chat. Okay, information and collaboration, interesting. I love this response. Information dissemination. There was another really good one up here. I can't seem to find it though. Effective implementation of proposed improvement plan. You know, that's something that I see all of the time. It's one thing to come up with an improvement plan. It's another thing altogether to actually implement it. And all too often schools get caught up in this cycle of busyness. These are great responses. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, keep the responses coming, and we're going to move on. This is really helpful. So incidentally, the types of responses you're putting are sort of categorically the challenges that you find with monitoring and evaluation globally. How am I progressing? Okay, so effective monitoring and evaluation and sort of context sensitization. I am going to see if I can zoom in a bit on this. This is a table that I really love, and I'm going to explain it or walk you through it. In 2016, the management consulting firm McKinsey released a study on the characteristics of how the world's most improved school systems keep getting better. I always stumble with that title a little bit, but essentially it's, if you take a school system and you find that it's continuing to improve and even improve, you know, sort of across milestones, what are the characteristics of those systems? What they found was that schools are capable of improving at any stage in their developmental journey. And so you can find schools, you know, we always talk about Singapore, Finland, in either of those contexts and see some fabulous schools. And yes, they've had an improvement journey, but you can also go into other contexts, contexts where, you know, the starting point might be a bit lower and also see continuous improvement. So the idea is not that all schools should look the same, because we're not going to find equity in resources. We're not going to find equitable environments. But the idea is that whatever your environment is, you should be committed to that improvement. So if we look across the top, we can see this improvement journey. So if a school is poor, right, how does it improve to being fair, or as we say in the UAE, acceptable? If it is fair, acceptable, how does it progress to good? If it's good, how does it progress to great? And if it's great, how does it progress to excellent? And there were certain cross-cutting themes that ran across. So schools that were poor, progressing to fair or acceptable, had to work to improve, right? Needed to work on the basics of achieving literacy and numeracy. And there were certain interventions that enabled these schools to do that effectively. If they were progressing from fair to good, it was often a matter of getting the foundations in place. So certain systems, and we'll take a look at that as well. Kind of the professionalism of the school, I would say. Good to great was actually more about shaping the professional, developing leaders, developing teachers. And then great to excellent was more in the space of really improving through peer collaboration and innovation. Now, what's really unique in your context in Lagos, and as well in my context in the UAE, is that you have schools that are incredibly diverse, and you have schools across the school continuum. So do we. I can name schools in Dubai that are truly poor schools, where the student learning outcomes are absolutely unacceptable. The management is deeply, struggling, and we have inspection reports that are published that will outline all of these things. If a school stays at that poor level, I think for 3 years, then they're required to close. No one's advocating for closing schools, of course. But you know, we also then have schools that are great and on a journey to becoming excellent. And actually, great to excellent is as hard as poor to fair. But the point is, everyone needs to continue to improve. Now, I want you, whether you're a school leader or an OEQA official, I want you to think for a moment, and no one's going to ask you to share school names, but even if you take your piece of paper and your pen, I want you to write down one school that you know of, that you're aware of. Maybe you've been there, maybe it's in your neighborhood, that you believe, right, would sit at each one of these sort of stages in the improvement journey. So write down one school that you know of that you would see as wanting to progress from poor to fair, another school that would need to progress from fair to good to great, and great to excellent. Just take a moment to jot those down. I'm going to write my own down. Okay, so hopefully you've had a moment to.
Sorry, before we go on, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of DG online now.
Ah, welcome.
Fabiola Seriki-Ayeni. DG, good morning, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, Ms. Christine. Thank you for your patience.
Morning,
Everyone,
DG.
thank you. Okay, so we're here to get started. I see that they're doing an assignment now. I think you've given our participants an assignment to do. Okay.
And as always, DG, I'm going to ask you to do the same.
Okay. Yes. All right. I'm on top of it. Let me mute.
Okay. No naming names of the schools, of course, but just jot down one that you know of or have been to that you would see as poor to fair, one that's fair to good, one that's good to great, and one that's great to excellent.
Ooh, I have to indicate the name?
No, well, not publicly. Just writing it down for your own reference.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. We have 87 people on so far.
Amazing.
How many more minutes do we have?
Like 1.
Okay, I got it.
I think most of you have probably already written the schools down. So I want to draw your attention then to the intervention clusters, because whether you're a school leader considering this, and you should be able to also think about where does your own school fit in a way that's pretty candid too. The intervention clusters are the recommendations, right? These would be recommendations that an OEQA officer, would or should be making to the school when they evaluate the school. But it's also, research-based interventions or recommendations that can work for you as a principal to essentially recommend to your board. So at that poor to fair, and by the way, sometimes even within a school, right, you'll have areas that are poor to fair and other areas that might be fair to good or good to great. You might have a great facility, but you might also find that there's very little instructional time on task. That often happens with expensive new schools, high cost new schools. When they open, you may have teachers who are distracted by the organizational issues that can plague new schools and then may not have a lot of instructional time on task, but you may have a beautiful building. And I can name a few, but I'm not going to.
Please don't. Please don't.
I will not. I will not. No, I'm not from Lagos. In my own experience. But I also am speaking as somebody who's worked in new schools, and I know the challenges that new schools face, right? So if you look at this, these are the intervention clusters. So providing.
I just wanted to interject, ma'am. Is it possible for us to make this screen a bit larger? Fauzia, could you help with that? Because it is a little blurry. I know it's because it's a screenshot. So yes, maybe we should start from the beginning.
Better?
Exactly. Yes, that is a little bit better. Oh, I'm sorry. You have to do it on your end. Is that what it is?
I do.
Okay.
do. Yeah,
Sorry
this
about
is
that.
probably the biggest I'm going to be able to get
I
it.
think that is good. I think that is good. And
Okay.
I absolutely love, love, love this report. For those of you who have not read it, please get your hands on it. And I think we should probably include this as part of the resources for on Lagos Learn Together. Let's include the report. It's a fantastic report. It's a fantastic report, and it does a good job of figuring out where we are in a snapshot and where you want to be. I believe typically McKinsey use these at the state level and at country levels to see where schools are, okay? When it comes to not just learning outcomes, but these different components.
Absolutely. And one thing that I always stress when I'm using this report is that, well, typically you would look at a state or a country and say, you know, this is where it is. You're in a very diverse setting, right? And I would compare that to, you know, other countries that I work with where the majority of the schools are state schools. The majority of your schools, similar to the UAE, right, are private schools. And so when you have almost all private schools, right, 80 to 90% private schools, you're going to find exceptional diversity across the schools. And as I said, sometimes even within a school, you might have one school that has a couple of areas where they're really doing super well, a couple of areas where they're struggling. These interventions can be a little bit of a mix and match, right? And that's one of the challenges as a state. How do you provide support for schools across the range of appropriate interventions?
Absolutely. And I think as a state, it also speaks to not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, right? So if we are expecting teachers in their own capacity to have a systematic approach to individualized instruction, then we also need to find a way to have a systematic approach to the needs of the different types of schools. And I think that, you know, with this administration is something that we are strongly working on and we're gearing toward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just take a moment, if you're a school leader, to look at the list of interventions based on the sort of category.
Yes, if you could,
right?
Exactly the theme a little bit. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, there we go. And
so keep in mind, this is going to be available on Lagos Learns. Yes.
Yeah, and think for a moment about, you know, pick one of the schools that you wrote down and think about one intervention that might make sense for them based on this. So if I were thinking about, for example, Good to Great School, and I have one in mind that we work with here in the UAE, I think they're, you know, one of the things that's really important for them is recruitment and pre-service training. So actually when they're recruiting primarily from India, what kind of training are they going to be able to give their teachers before they even set foot in Dubai, so that they're actually able to take forward the kind of unique instructional approach that this school has, like digital, rather than having more of a paper and pencil type of approach to teaching and learning. So that would fit in to that raising the caliber of entering teachers and principals in the Good to Great bracket. Whereas I can think of another school that I previously worked with that would have benefited from an organizational redesign. The way they had structured their leadership didn't really make sense for the type of curriculum that they were teaching. Okay, we're going to move on from this slide. As much as I love this table and I could spend all day on it.
Same here.
Yeah, that's you and I we geek out over these reports. You really are, and I think, DG, I'm turning this slide over to you to talk about the 3 pillars of education and quality assurance. But if there's anything you'd like me to jump in and talk about, I'm happy to.
That's totally fine. And I know that at the beginning, when we started this PD with the DG series, even though that's not initially what it was called, it sort of had a good ring to it, thanks to Christine. We did touch on this when we had the module on school self-evaluation. And when we think about the different types of monitoring that the office does, whole school evaluation is one of the central types of evaluation that this office does and that we provide, right? Because it's holistic in nature and it does allow for these three pillars. So it is in essence the strength of Office of Education Quality Assurance. So we start with a self-evaluation. How do you see yourself? If we think about the previous slide, where schools are going from fair to good, good to great, great to, you know, if we think about that, where are you now? If you were to take a snapshot, it's challenging because everyone wants to be great. Everyone wants to be good to great at least. But sometimes in order to move forward and to improve, we need to be honest about where we are. And that is why the self-evaluation is so important. We realize that the way human beings are set up, we want that, but how do you gear human beings when they're looking at themselves to look at themselves in a way that is objective? That's why it's very important for the rubric or the grading tool that is being used to have broken down those components, right? So that they're more bite-sized and they're not just asking the question, are you fair to good, but how are your processes? Are there gaps in the lesson plans that need to be scripted, right? Whatever it is, it needs to be broken down. And that's what we have done to improve that self-evaluation. So we start with the self-evaluation. Before we even get to your school, we want to see how you see yourselves. And we use that as information. We believe that that data is useful because we see how you see yourselves. And then when we come in to do external evaluation, we're able to compare. We're able to compare that. Does the way the schools see themselves, does it align under the same rubric, under the same circumstances? Does it align? Okay, and that tells us a lot if there's alignment or not. Now, central to that is how the school can continuously improve. We know that when we do something like whole school evaluation, technically it's something that is to be done once every 3 years, but we are concerned and we want schools to function optimally every single day. So what type of tools can we sort of help you with to ensure that you are continuously on this journey of self-improvement? So on one end, you are being held accountable. There are minimum standards, but on the other end, there are best practices and their research-backed interventions that we have found to be effective. So if you go through that plan, could it be that your school can improve over a period of time before we even anticipate that happens? So this really speaks to the importance of these three pillars when it comes to quality assurance. The next slide. Ms. Christine, you want me to take this?
I could do this one and you can do the next one if you want. So, effective quality assurance is critical. It's kind of the baseline, right? As we said previously, if you want schools to improve, you need to actually be able to get out into schools and understand, what quality is and what it looks like in your context. And there are some great benchmarks of really effective monitoring and evaluation programs. Probably the best known is Ofsted in the UK, where schools are regularly inspected. And then in the UAE, actually, we have a very Ofsted-based school inspection program. Now, nobody likes a school inspection, right? Sometimes school leaders will say with a smile on their face, it gives me an opportunity to shine, but really no one likes school inspections. But at the end of the day, a good school evaluation that makes the school better is good for everyone. So I think it's one of those sort of unpleasant things that actually is good for education, good for school operators in the end, and good for society at large. But having said that, one of the weaknesses, I guess you could say, is that most school monitoring and evaluation programs are really expensive. Just to give you a sense, the Ofsted annual budget, I believe this is from 2018, is actually 150 million pounds. I mean, that's quite a budget, right? And that is for a 2-day annual inspection of each school. The UAE, the budget's not published, but it's a 4 to 5 day school inspection, so it's quite time consuming as well. But digital technology provides some opportunities, and we'll do a little mini deep dive into this later in terms of ways to improve the efficiency and the overall impact of this evaluation process. And then also the opportunity to experiment with methods to evaluate digital modes of education. This links into the final part, which is the threat. I don't know if it's really a threat per se, but quality assurance is not static, right? And it sits as the basis for monitoring and evaluation. COVID-19 disrupted that in 2 ways, not just the delivery and the operationalization of monitoring and evaluation, but also we need to think differently about what is quality education in a more digital world. So with that, I'll also turn it over to the DG to talk about what might be some of the if you were to do a SWOT on monitoring and evaluation or quality assurance in the Lagos context, what might that be? Having it, there we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we definitely have some strengths here. And before I just go into the SWOT analysis, it is really useful to think through the general SWOT of, global challenges that are faced with quality assurance. Some countries don't even have a centralized office that sort of does that because it has come to the point where it's decentralized and it's done even at the school level. But notwithstanding, how does Lagos fit into this entire ecosystem? So some of the strengths that QA has is we have many people. If we were to think through how we've typically gone through quality assurance or inspectorate, as it was known in the past and done in the past, I would say even with this staff strength is to also calibrate to ensure that everyone within the agency has a certain, skill set. And I think we'll also talk about that when it comes to the weaknesses or even the threats. So in terms of numbers, we have the numbers and we have offices spread across. So there's opportunities for this to be somewhat decentralized from headquarters in Alausa and for it to really happen more effectively at the local government level where all schools are, right? All schools are part of some local government. Then we were really able to have, successful school reopening, monitoring and evaluation team, so, we had the Forward to School initiative where our officers went out and after the schools gained a visit, went to the schools and were more so consultants to the different schools that earned a visit towards COVID-19 compliance. But even at that, we were able to go around and see how schools were doing when it came to those basic things, infrastructural and otherwise, that we felt was needed for COVID. Right. So it also shows the agency's ability to be innovative and to be flexible. Right. This really speaks to what we were talking about, the global challenges. Right. How flexible are we willing to be? I know we also came up with a framework for digital education, digital learning that schools would be able to use, especially when schools were on lockdown. Okay, some of the weaknesses that we have, and they are pretty hefty. We have a lot of unregistered schools. So government does not even know that they exist and they're operating either without registration
All right.
they're operating.
Good afternoon. So yes,
I'm sorry.
I can imagine also what you are.
Can we mute
the light.
Person that is speaking? Okay. So unregistered schools, if we don't know that you exist, it's a challenge to even evaluate you, and you're not even supposed to be operating, right? So unregistered, and then even people that are operating under fake approvals. Believe it or not, there are schools that have gone through some sort of backdoor where they've gone through a fake approval process, right? To promote a challenge when on paper, it looks like a school is supposed to be approved, but really we know that the school may even be unapprovable, right? So what are the weaknesses that exist there? There's a lack of transparency, and then there's 3 years for the whole school evaluation. There are many schools where we go often, and then there are many schools that we don't even get to. So having, and this is where the data capturing exercise that we want to embark on would really, really help, okay? Because then we'll have all of that information and we'll be able to use technology to tackle some of these weaknesses. Opportunities, like I just sort of spoke on, having to do with automation and digitization of our key processes. This will increase registration, allow for ongoing monitoring and evaluation, and provide developmental training. We're all in the comfort of our office or on the road, and we're all able to have access to training, to support as we are now, right? So there are many opportunities that exist to scale some of the interventions of the state, right? We don't have to wait for a hall to become available. We can offer help now and on demand, as we see with our YouTube page. Then in terms of the threats, inconsistent access to technology, lack of standardized assessment data limits the reliability of evaluation judgments, okay? So those things have definitely, I would even add, in addition to that, ensuring that the evaluators that are brought into the agency have the minimum standards that have been stipulated by the federal government quality assurance, right? Where they're supposed to have a minimum type of qualifications. They're supposed to be in the classroom for minimum number of time. So it's not just like a regular government parastatal where anyone should just be placed. It should ensure that there's a different level of screening that occurs before officers come, so that we can start here and not start here when it comes to upskilling our officers. Okay, so those are some of the challenges, the threats, the opportunities, the weaknesses, and the strength that Lagos State is facing, and how we have chosen to use those opportunities. You know, many times when people talk of COVID, they talk negatively. I talk very positively, because COVID really allowed us to think outside of the box, and it allowed us to play a role in schools that we had previously not really played a role in. Okay, so even though there are challenges, opportunities have come as a result of that. Ms.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to apologize for having my audio.
Okay, that's I wasn't sure who it was. Okay, that's.
So it was me. It was me. I'm usually the first to call out the offenders, and this time I was one. I will find you and I will mute you. Okay. So we're going to now take a moment to double click, so to speak, on the quality of care, guidance, and safety, which is standard 2.3 in the federal framework. But DG, do you want to just provide a little bit of context for this, and then I'll jump into some of the nitty-gritty.
Okay. So we know it's unfortunate I don't have the document so that you know what it looks like, but the federal government instrument that is used for quality assurance is available for download at the oeqalagos.com website. It's also, I believe, on lagoslearnstogether.com, or will be. after this. I'm not sure if it's on Lagos,
I can add it.
but it is on OEQA Lagos on our website. So we have 7 thematic areas that we look through that our work is centered on, okay? So with this federal government quality assurance handbook and instrument, yes, they've helped us to, section them off, but we realize that if we want to make this document more usable, not just for evaluators, but also for schools to see themselves, we needed to break down the standards a little bit more. And right now, many things have happened and have led to the office, even before now, really having a huge interest in all of the thematic areas, but specifically that of the quality of care, guidance, and safety. We know that Lagos State is one of the only states to have a localized adaptation of the child protection, Child Safeguarding and Child Protection Act. So it's localized and it is in the form of an executive order within Lagos State as at 2016. And they're documented reporting procedures that every childminder, everyone that works with children is supposed to be able to adhere to, including having a designated officer within your school. Okay, and recognizing that all school teachers, principals, anyone that works with children is a mandated reporter by law in Lagos State. So even if you have a suspicion that a child is being abused or neglected, whatever it is, you are required by law. If you are not aware before, please be aware now that you are required by law to report. So when we think about how we can ensure the quality of care, guidance, and safety, yes, to an extent, there are many things like the infrastructural, setup of a school or a classroom that can add to that. But we also know that there are things like the documentation process, how incident reports are documented, or how they're documented, how they are escalated, and how they're treated is extremely important. So as a result of that, we have created sort of mini standards within this major standard to make it easier for schools to be able to use as a checklist. We've done this, we need to get better at this, we're doing this well, so that at the end of the day, you can completely fulfill this requirement for the quality of care, guidance, and safety. I think you're muted. Do you want me to read it?
Just saying,
and I promise I will also make this larger because I know some of us have to be looking at the screen. So we'll make it larger for you when we upload it also.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have the uploaded version, you won't need that. I think if you're looking at your phone, it's going to be on the small side. So we're now going to zoom in on one of these sort of substandards. So let's.
Okay, I'm thinking maybe I should have read them so that people.
Oh, I can do that if you want, or you can do it.
No, you can do it. That's fine. The show of love between us.
So the school, first of all, so this is the first substandard, should provide a safe learning and working environment for learners and for teachers. The second is that all schools should have easy access to good sanitation and first aid facilities. The third is all schools should ensure that meals are served to learners should be hygienically prepared, adequate, and balanced. Schools should provide guidance and counseling services, including support for individual creativity and talent, as well as support for traumatized, indigent, or other vulnerable groups. All schools should give opportunities for learners to express themselves through class or peer group meetings, perhaps the learners' representative council. And finally, schools should promote safety skills where learners are taught how to stay safe, protect themselves from harm, and take responsibility for their own and others' safety. So
thank you.
We can zoom. Sorry, go ahead.
I just said thank you for reading.
Oh, no problem.
Okay.
So if we think about one of the examples, right, and this would tie into this quality of care, guidance, and safety, we might expect a school, or we would expect a school to have a charter in place that explains how learners can expect to be protected in school. So as a school leader, right, it becomes your responsibility then to think about, well, what might that charter look like, first of all? And then secondly, how would we really be able to action that charter to disseminate that? On the other hand, as an evaluator, you would want to see A, the documentation, is there a charter? And then B, is the charter actioned? Is it a living document?
Exactly.
Is it in use? So these could then be some sub elements, and I'll just give you a moment to take a look at this. If you're a school leader, I want you to think about your own school for a moment and think about just, okay, what if I were to ask a learner, how would you report a harmful incident? What would they define as a harmful incident? Is that aligned to your school policies and procedures? And how would they respond to that? Would they know with whom they should speak? And how to report it? And that, would there be an investigation, first of all? Are there written down investigation procedures? And do stakeholders believe that those procedures encourage an honest, comfortable, and threat-free environment? And then finally, coming off of the back of those investigations, would actions and decisions be taken or made in a timely manner? And I think it's an interesting self-evaluation question to ask. I think especially on the learner side, like, you really talk to a student, a primary 2 pupil, who would they turn to if they needed help? Do they know when it is the right time to say, yeah, this could potentially be harmful and I need to speak with someone?
And how would that look like, right? How would that look like along the different class, right? So if someone is in primary 1, as opposed to if someone is in primary 6, the approach must be different, but the same standard. And what is the evidence that the teacher is empowered to be able to do that? Because this is, when we're talking about policy, how does a policy translate to action, as you said? And one cannot work without the other. You can't have a policy that the teachers don't even know how to implement and cascade to students. And it can also be the other way around, where you may have a progressive teacher that wants to do all of those things, but there is no enabling environment to protect the work that they are trying to do. So they must work in tandem.
So, and the question about evidence is a really key one, because it's one thing to have something written on paper, very important, by the way, but also to have it in use. So here are just some of the forms of evidence that, an evaluator might be looking for, or that a school leader might want to be able to produce. These are primarily policies, but I would also add to this, interviews, right? Interviews with students. But I'd like to pose a question to you. What would you add to this? And you can use the chat. Whoop, sorry. Zoom in here a little bit. What would you add to this list of evidence, other ways of being able to say, yes, we can see that there is a charter in place and learners really know what they can expect to be protected in school? While you're writing that down, I do think there are a few people with hands raised. I don't know if Ms. Fauzia, if you wanted to call on them.
Okay. I have some hands raised. Maybe they'd like to contribute. I'm just going to quickly unmute them. Stella Adefison, Rosemary Dudu, Olufemi Ogunlade. Please, you could unmute yourself and let us have your contributions. Stella Adefison, I'm sorry if I didn't get the name correctly. Rosemary Dudu Olufemi Ogunlade. Would you like to please unmute yourself? I'll also call randomly on Abiodun Fajobi. And Miss Adiola Arofin. Please, if you're online, if you can hear me, please just unmute yourself. Miss Stella, you still have your hands raised. Mr. Olufemi Ogunlade. Mr. Olufemi.
Yes, good afternoon, ma.
Okay.
This is Olufemi Ogunlade. I didn't raise my hand, but I've been part of this program. Hello, ma.
You can hear you, please.
I didn't raise my hand. The program online is a welcome address in a way that is going to assist the running of the school. Whenever the quality assurance people come, we'll know what they are after. Then we'll be able to prepare ourselves ahead of time. Thank you.
Did you get that?
What? Hello? The line is breaking.
What's the response from Mr. Olufemi Ogunlade?
Hello?
Hello.
I didn't ask question. I said I've been part of the program since morning. And I said it's a welcome address concerning the administration of schools to be acquainted with what are the areas to be covered by quality assurance officers whenever they come around to visit the schools. And also to help us prepare ourselves ahead of time and to be in line with new innovations being brought in by quality assurance office of Lagos State. So I'm appreciating the effort of people in charge.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, welcome.
Has that answered Mr. Singh?
Like he said, he was just appreciating the office and just talking about his areas of sort of concern about having a clearer picture as to what QA when they come into schools. I believe that it was just a comment, and I don't believe that it's specific to the question that Ms. Christine had posed. Okay, so these are just examples, right? I know it's pretty light, we'll try to make it a bit darker, but these are just examples. Okay, of effective evidence. And as we continue to prepare for the automation of some of our key processes, figuring out the type of evidence that would capture what schools are doing well, especially, is something that is ongoing for us as an office. So the federal government guideline has some evidence, but it's not, it's sort of fixed. So what we've done with the quality assurance supplement to the handbook is to expand it and make sure that schools know exactly the different type of evidence that suffice for the different standards. So for instance, we have here, the school has a charter in place which states how learners can expect to be protected in school. And the number one way in which you can tell the effectiveness of this charter is if it is something that students actually know, right? If if we're saying that students are supposed to know how they are expected to be protected in school, then students should know the different ways. And this is not something you just tell students. This is maybe by having sensitization workshops, embedding it into instruction, having value-based instruction, different things, and then also having things like contracts in place where students and their family members are walking through these things. It could be something that is done at the beginning of a school year, right? When people want to just start, it could be something that is done those first few days. You are walking through these policy documents, and you're making it more usable to students either in primary 1 or in SS3, because it will differ from class to class. So we have school record, we have child safeguarding policy and reporting procedures. We have a student and staff and wellness policy, behavior policy, discipline policy and procedures. So how are acts of discipline, how are they escalated? How are they treated? Is there a reward system, not just discipline, right? So some of the things we're discussing today, they feed into other workshops that we have actually done. I can name about 3 that I believe feed into this particular one. So it's important to see that everything is quite fluid and that they feed into one another. And more than likely, if we're successful in one aspect of what we are doing, we will be successful in the other aspect also. Let's move on.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, DG. Okay, so I want to just take a quick moment. I know the DG has shared the automation program overall, and that really is intended to provide, I would say, greater transparency, greater clarity, and to make this monitoring and evaluation and school improvement more of an ongoing collaborative process. So I'm going to jump out of this document and just take a moment. Now, in terms of this software, it is sort of a gradual rollout where schools are being invited in groups to begin the work of self-evaluation and uploading evidence onto the automation platform. So if you give me a moment, I'm going to just pull it up and log on and just show you what this actually looks like and how it can bring some ultimately greater ease to the process. Just give me one moment. DG, I don't know if while I'm pulling that up, if you wanted to share anything.
Hold on.
Okay. So
Okay.
there is a. Okay, ma'am.
Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to read the comment in the chat box while Ms. Christian was getting ready, but did you go ahead, ma, please? Or do I read it?
Okay, I'll just briefly talk through. So we know that COVID brought about so many interesting challenges that we had to be able to tackle. But what COVID really has done, has brought the future to the present. And we realize that if we want to be on the same level as our peers around the world, then we need to start changing certain things. It doesn't mean we want to automatically become the US or the UAE or anything like that, but we need to think through, if we are to scale our processes and we're able to do it well, we need to be able to find ways to bring information together using technology. And this is what this is an example of. So Mrs. Christine, go ahead.
And this would actually make you really the first state, the first place on the continent that I think is taking this type of innovative approach to supporting monitoring and evaluation through digitization. So We talked about those components, right? The school improvement plan, the self-evaluation, and external evaluation or whole school evaluation. What's most central to that, of course, is the self-evaluation. So the self-evaluation is when, as a school, you reflect on the different components of the quality assurance framework, and you consider, well, where do we stand on this? Would we be, acceptable, good, satisfactory, outstanding? If I go in, I can show you what this looks like. So let's just go on to delegated elements. And I'm going to pull up the ones that relate specifically. So you can see your standards and substandards here, right? So you have your outcomes for learners, achievements and standards, and then you have the substandards, so the indicators below that, different things like consistency of achievement, learners' level of achievement in public examination, in internal examination, and so on. But I'm going to skip ahead because on the 4th page of your indicators to the ones that are more related to child protection.
Okay.
And because I believe this is going to be a core area of focus for you. So we have the different substandards, right? Where these then get assigned to, you would, as a school leader, assign these to a member of your team for them to do the self-evaluation and upload just the kinds of evidence that we already spoke about. Policies, maybe a picture or even a recording of an online session for parents about one of the policies, or notes from a school governance meeting, or notes from a student leadership meeting. Those are the kinds of things that could be evidence, right? So it gets assigned to different members of the team. They then provide that self-evaluation. I'll show you what that looks like. And then you, as the principal, would approve it. After you approve it, it goes to the external evaluator, and they have an opportunity then to give you feedback on it or to make recommendations, right? And so it helps you in terms of knowing, okay, fine, what are they looking for? But it also helps bring some, I would say, ease to the process overall. So let's just take a look at this one. This one's pending approval. So if I were the principal, this is parents help the school in solving academic and social problems with learners. Interesting. So if I click on that, I can see what are the elements of this that have been uploaded. And we can see regular engagement of parents in school life through various modes of communication. I can take a look under action at the comments that have been posted. So the teacher has given themselves a rating of good, right? And by sharing comments as evidence. Parent forum is functional. Parents were engaged in the school life through attending open day and parent-teacher association meeting. That's great. But as the principal, I've already written back to say, please provide evidence. So the teacher would then go back, they would get this notification, go back in, provide some evidence. And then when I'm ready, I might say, yes, this is very good, and approve. Or I might say, no, this is acceptable, actually, and approve it at that level. And then that's when the evidence would go or be provided to the evaluation officer. So it really is intended to break down the different components of monitoring or evaluation and make it a more collaborative process. I'm going to switch back over to the PowerPoint because I want to show you just an example of what, the outcomes of something like that can be. So let's just, these are really small. I'll just read through it, but let me see if I can make this one bigger. Sorry, bouncing. Okay, so this is an example of an evaluation of a school. that was rated as outstanding for health and safety arrangements for child protection and safeguarding. So I'll let you just take a moment to look at the comments. In case it's too small or you don't have your screen, I'll actually read through them, which I don't usually like to do, but I will. Staff, students, and parents are fully aware of the school's comprehensive set of policies and procedures. Well, what would be the evidence for that? Maybe a poll, but more likely interviews. The buildings and equipment are maintained in excellent condition. Safety checks are frequent and rigorous. So again, what would be the evidence? You might want to actually see it happening as an evaluation officer while you're there, but you might also go back in and take a look at, paperwork that shows the safety checks. The school is a very safe, secure, and healthy environment. Supervision of students is exceptionally effective at all times. That would primarily be through observation, but you might also look at a duty schedule or a duty roster, particularly during arrival and departure and at break times. The school maintains very detailed and secure records of incidents and subsequent actions, including maintenance issues and how they were addressed. Again, that's a review of documentation and records. Health promotion is integrated into the curriculum. Students are involved in many sporting and other health promoting activities. Students' lunch boxes in all phases contain predominantly healthy foods. A growing number of students walk or cycle to school. But I also want to share with you a school that wasn't rated quite as highly. It was a school that had moved from acceptable to good. And you can see here that, there are areas that are becoming more effective, but still some areas of need. So the school effectively manages health and safety procedures, including those to protect and safeguard children. Policies on key topics such as cyber security are reviewed annually and disseminated well. There's a proactive approach to risk identification with sufficiently regular fire drills. We'll skip down. The supervision of school transportation is very effective, and the school ensures the safe arrival and dispersal of students. However, safety factors still occur when families ignore the school's rules, including walking to the front car park, where inconsiderate driving can place them at risk. Okay, so.
Across all of these, I also just want to mention that, this will be, the more information we have, the more thorough our reports would be, because it would just be a matter of combing through the types of things that are seen on the field and clicking on those things, and then where they have to be personalized or more personalized, or where it's not already captured as part of the automation remarks, right? Because we know that sometimes you may go to a school and you may see something you have never seen before. Not likely, but it is possible. There's a first time for everything, Absolutely. So I just want to state that, so that the more we're able to document what we see on the field, what people are submitting as evidence, we had an experience with this, I just want to, go off a bit. We had an experience when it came to our COVID forward to school process, where schools were required to take the courses. They were also required to show evidence that their school staff had taken them. And we asked schools to then submit plans so that they can earn a visit of the office. And hands down, what we noticed is that it's not that schools were not doing what they were not supposed to do. Is that schools failed to effectively document what they are doing. So for us, it just shows that we need to, support you more, but the heavy lifting is on the school to sit down and to figure out, okay, what is our plan when it comes to operations? What is our plan when it comes to safety, health, and sanitation? What is our plan when it comes to learning? What is our plan when it comes to communication? oftentimes we just say, oh, we have a policy for this, but how will it work? You know, and that is where what we are trying to do is really going to hinge on, yes, the government is providing an enabling environment, but the schools are going to have to do some heavy lifting, and schools are going to have to be able to sit down with their staff and talk through and figure out what will work for their own school environment while adhering to government rules, regulations, and policies. So that's just an observation that we noticed, that when there was more support, schools actually did a little bit better for submitting their plans to be evaluated. So that is just one example, you know. So as we move toward automation and digitization, I would imagine that that would still be an issue, and we need to be able to tackle it. And for schools, we need to be able to do the heavy lifting that it requires.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. You know, and I think ultimately for this to be collaborative, what you want is to have recommendations, which is what we see at the end here, right? The evaluators in the case of this school gave recommendations, and then the next time they evaluate, they're able to focus really on, were those recommendations implemented, which speaks to two of the major issues that people raised in the what's missing question at the beginning. One was around communication, and then the other was around the successful implementation of a school improvement plan or school development plan. If you know that your school development plan will serve as the basis for your next evaluation, it's much easier for you to focus, right, on what should be in that, and also ensuring that it's implemented. So with that, I'm actually going to stop my share and turn it over to Q&A. I think we have about 7 minutes left, and I do think there might have been a few people with hands up, but DG and I are happy to answer any questions you might have at this stage.
Okay.
Ms. Fauzia, can you please help us with the Q&A?
Yes, ma'am. So we still have 2 hands, Ms. Stella Adefison and Mr. Olufemi Ogunlade. We still have your hands raised. Please, if you'd like to ask your questions, the DG and Ms. Christine will be glad to answer those questions. Though I saw a comment in the chat box talking about, let me just quickly look through. Okay, that person was talking about the effective evidence, and she said that she thinks another example of effective evidence would be partnership with parents and other bodies. So that was her comment in the chat room. Please, if you'd like to ask some questions, please let's use the raise hand button so that I can unmute you, and then you go ahead with your questions. If Mr. Ogunlade, Olufemi, and Ms. Stella, they would like to give their responses, please. If you'd also like to share your questions in the chat box, I'll just read it out as I see those questions coming in. So we are yet to, okay, there's a question posted in the Q&A section. This person, Ms. Josephine, says, self-evaluations can be very subjective. What controls in addition to evidences can be put in place to make it more objective? Dijima? Please, would you like to respond to Ms. Joseph?
Okay, I thought Ms. Christine wanted to answer that.
Okay. Ms. Christine.
I can give you, yeah, a quick view, and then DG, you might want to I guess, share more of the Legos context. But
Yeah, well,
self-evaluations indeed can be very, very subjective. One of the parameters that you would probably want to ultimately include in the whole school evaluation is the accuracy of the self-evaluation. In time, and I would say in my experience, it takes 2 to 3 years of feedback on the accuracy for a school self-evaluation to improve. And it's because, you know, as you said, it is subjective. And people, you only know what you know, right? You know the school that you went to, the school you're working in. You don't necessarily have a lot of case studies to compare. As more and more evidence is uploaded onto the automation platform, we will ask schools for permission to share, you know, cleaned, anonymous versions of their evidence to be able to say, actually, this is evidence that would qualify as good, or this is evidence that would qualify as outstanding. But DJ, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Christina. Thank you so much for that question. It is a valid one, and it's a very good one, right? So I want to piggyback off of what Ms. Christine has said. Yes, it is subjective, and to my knowledge, you know, the self-evaluation is exactly what it states it is, right? We know that we're still coming to do an external evaluation at your school, right? But how do you see yourself? Well, you could only see yourself based on what you know, right? That's why it's important that we continuously improve our own instruments for self-evaluation so that you can better get more specific. So that on one end is improving the actual self-evaluation form that is being used to make sure that schools are able to really dig into the nitty-gritty to evaluate themselves. That's number one. Number two, what Ms. Christine also said is getting evidence of what outstanding looks like, getting evidence of what good, fair, poor. So you say, I'm not here, but I'm actually not here either, right? So the more you exercise that ability to calibrate yourself, and the more you see how accurate or not accurate you are, which is why it's important for us to give you feedback as to how accurate you were, how close you were to actuality, the better you become. And we realize this is something that may not happen immediately. It's something that is very likely to happen after a few rounds of the exercise. Okay, so on one end is improving the self-evaluation, ensuring, number two, that it's collaborative and that the schools recognize it's collaborative in nature. Okay, and then number three is gathering more evidence. We know sometimes we don't like to show things, sometimes you know, in terms of privacy issues or feeling like, you know, we want to be private, we want to hold information in. Other people don't get the benefit of learning from us, you know. So as government, how can we leverage some of these things we see on the field reasonably so? Maybe we have to take away names, we have to blur out things to protect people, but that's so people know that, okay, this is an example of what this categorization is, and then you can make better decisions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I know for me, I do have a hard stop now. I think I'll leave, if it's okay with you, the group, and then maybe you could take another 1 or 2 questions. Is that okay?
Of course. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Great to be a part of your journey.
Thank you.
God bless you too. Have a wonderful day.
So, Ms. Fauzia?
Yes, we still have one more question in the Q&A. Okay. Hello. Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. My screen just froze up. Somebody, an anonymous attendee has said, what are the requirements to be met if a school is to be visited by education quality assurance, by OEQA?
Okay, there are many different things that we go to schools for. We do have the mandates to ensure quality in all schools below tertiary. And we do this primarily through evaluation, assessment, standardization, and we do some monitoring. So we have the mandate to accredit all schools toward external examinations. We approve and register all private schools within the state. We are responsible for grading essentially through whole school evaluation of our schools. We do monitoring and investigation within the state. So any investigative issue that comes, we are the ones that execute investigation. So there are many reasons that we can be at your school. In essence, we could go for site inspection, we can go for approval, so there are many things. It really just depends on what we are there for. We also do follow through. So in the event that we've gone to your school for a special evaluation or for a whole school evaluation, and we want to follow through on the things you're supposed to have done, we come in for follow through. Okay, so it really just depends on what we're there for. And I think that is all I can say without giving you a lecture on our mandates within the state.
Okay, I hope the anonymous attendee has just gotten all that the DG has said. DG, for now, we don't have any more questions in the Q&A box. And then I've gone through the chat. More of appreciative messages. People are thanking the DG and Ms. Christine for a well-delivered workshop. We've got a comment from Ms. Olubumi, Ms. Josephine, Ms. Comfort, all saying thank you for this wonderful seminar.
Thank you so much. For those of you that have joined us for the first time, I want to say thank you. Those of you that have been here and have tried your best to tune in either live or later on YouTube, I also want to say thank you. I want to thank our evaluators for making time also, despite their various assignments they have, to ensure that they're here either live or that they do the trainings on their own. And of course, want to give a big thumbs up for Mr. Governor for believing in what we're doing and supporting us wholeheartedly to ensure that such is able to happen. I want to thank our OEQA team also, especially the technical team and my anti-room, head of new projects, PRO, ICT, everyone. Thank you so much, even those that are not mentioned. We've never done anything like this, so it's been a learning curve for us all. It's put us on our toes, and it's really made us realize that we can be more impactful than we actually believed we could. So we want all of our evaluators, all of our school leaders and teachers to know that we are trying hard to ensure that you also have the tools in your toolbox to be successful. And we are holding you accountable to those standards because we know that you can reach them, right? You only hold people accountable when you believe that they're able to do it, right? So we are not going to relent. We are holding you to high standards, and we are holding ourselves to high standards also. I want to thank everyone who's here today, and we're rounding up. I believe we have 2 more sessions after this. We're just about done, and we'll see where the future sort of leads us after this. This is the first one we've done. We'll go back to the drawing board and figure out how we want to move forward. But remember that all resources are going to be available at lagoslearnstogether.com, and information about the office is available at oeqalagos.com. these live sessions are being currently live streamed on YouTube, and you can access them at a later time at OEQA Lagos on YouTube. So without further ado, we thank you. God bless you all. And compliments of the season.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.